The bar for improvement, is it so low for this upcoming season that it's embarrassing? Well, maybe, but it is incredibly important. We explain all that and more of your mailbag questions. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode of Locked On Spartans is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more as playoffs wind down and the sport stops sporting the way we want them to. Well, hey, FanDuel is here to rescue us because they're hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you all so much for tuning in to Locked On Spartans, your team in green and white 3 days a week for the rest of this month. But once August smacks us in the face, which it seems like 3 days from now, honestly, we will be back to 5 days per week. Please rate, review, subscribe, comment below what you are looking for as signs of improvement from Jonathan Smith and the rest of the Spartans in 2024, because, well, that will be the mailbag question that kicks this show off. But hey, really quick, if you ever want to reach out with a mailbag question, lockedonspartans@gmail.com is the best place to find us. All right, away we go. Spartan D4L writes in, more than win-loss, what specific things in the fall will show football is on the up? I'm thinking O-line play and secondary. Those are two strong ones, but we're going to break this up into three categories. One is just overall. I got one for the offensive side of the ball and then for the defensive side of the ball too. And guys, just like I said right at the top of the show, in the cold open, is the bar for what I'm looking for at least, and probably what you're looking for at least, very, it's just pathetic, embarrassing. Is it the bare minimum of what you should expect from a college sports team every single year? Well, it might be, because what I'm talking about is just competence. We've even thrown that C word around a lot this offseason, competence. And that could go in a variety of ways. And of course, we're just going to blanket it all because there were some, well, competence issues in the last few years, whether it was under Mel Tucker, whether it was under substitute teacher Harlan Barnett last year. Never mind that Michigan State didn't have an identity at all in the football field. If they did have an identity, it was unorganized chaos is probably the nice way to put it. So guys, last year, our Michigan State Spartans, they had 84 penalties. That was the most in the Big Ten. They also committed 60.7 yards worth of penalties. That was second most in the Big Ten. And that was kind of a trend here. The year before that, yeah, they were kind of in the middle of the pack as far as penalties go. But in 2021, that Peach Bowl year, the Kenneth Walker year, when we were smiling here on this show constantly, remember those glory days, they still had the most penalties in the Big Ten. That was always an issue under Mel Tucker. And last year, we saw that you cannot get away with it because, well, Michigan State's opponents committed the third fewest amount of penalties, just 56 against them last year. And of course, you can't coach the other team to commit penalties, but that's kind of to show that Michigan State already didn't have a lot of room for error last year. They expanded that by committing so many penalties that, well, they just shot themselves in the foot over and over again against teams that really didn't shoot themselves in the foot. And it could be the situation this year. Michigan State will be working with razor-thin margins. The total in Las Vegas for over-under is 4.5, right? Me, over here, I'll say it until I turn blue in the face. I think they'll be 7-5 this year. I'm pretty firm on that prediction, but still, that's not a prediction that's 10-2, 11-1, where you're expecting to win a lot of games. No, a lot of these games will be close. They'll be coin flippy, to the point where you just can't commit penalties. And when it comes to these penalties, too, it wasn't like a lot of them were conduct issues, right? Like unsportsmanlike conduct or just playing with their heads cut off and just playing too overly aggressive. It wasn't even that. It wasn't that just, they have behavior issues on the field and the culture needs a reset. The culture needs a reset in terms of just organization, because if you remember, guys, and I bet you do, a lot of procedural penalties, a lot of too many men on the field penalties, a lot of incorrect formation penalties, just simple middle school stuff. It was almost the free space on your weekly bingo card every Saturday that Michigan State and Ross Ells coached units would commit one of these stupid penalties that would just snowball into a bigger problem like, hey, we got to do a punt again because we didn't line up correctly. Hey, on our second attempt, well, they brought that punt back to the house. Or, oh my goodness, the second time we attempted a punt because of a stupid penalty, against Rutgers. We decided to snap the ball 25 feet over the punter's head. So, yes, those small penalties, they might not seem like much, but we saw last year how much they can matter. So that has to be shored up, as well as clock management, guys. Even during that fun year, 2021, the end of that Rutgers first half was a gong show. That was not fun. The end of the Indiana game in that same year. It's like, does anyone know the situation at hand? Why are we throwing the ball right now in this situation when we could just simply almost run the clock out? Or even 2022, you still saw those late game issues nag this team against Wisconsin, against Illinois, 2 games they miraculously won. And I know I'm leaving off a few games, but there were some clock issues and just realizing the game scenario. Can this new coaching staff come here and just fix that? Guys, I know that what we just talked about the last 5 minutes should be the bare minimum of what you expect from a coaching staff. But for the last 4 years, even that fun year, the Peach Bowl year, these are problems that have driven me and probably you up a wall and have costed Michigan State the chance to win some games here in the last few years. So really, the short way of putting all this is, guys, I'm just looking to see if we have adults in the room, to see if we have grown adults that know what they are doing on this coaching staff, because Lordy, that was not the case the last few years, as we all know. Anyway, I also got something for the offensive side of the ball and the defensive side of the ball too. Short yardage situations on the offense. So that is a 2-parter. The first part is that, just like you probably, I don't have any more drywall in my house because I've bashed my head into every piece of it on 3rd and 1s, on 4th and 1s, being unable to commit or to pick up the first down in short yardage situations. That's just one. It's just like being sick of seeing it. But number 2, that also goes with play calling. Okay, can you call correct plays? Can you identify early enough in the season what works and doesn't work? Can you just get first downs? Like, that is something that I'm going to be watching for as signs of improvement early on in this season. And just as a bonus one, I mean, this is a very common thing that everyone wants to throw around, but there is something to it. How does Aidan Chiles look? How does your new quarterback look, both with throws, like what kind of throws can he and can he not make? Is it going to work early on? Is it going to work in his junior year? Can you see the building blocks, all that good stuff? But also with his legs. Does he get too excited with his legs? Does he scramble out of the pocket a little too early? And with this offensive line that there's a lot of question marks about, that's going to be a legitimate thing to watch as to how jittery will he get throughout this offseason. Now, as far as Spartan D4L wrote in, they want to see improved offensive line play. And I know we just talked about short yardage situations, but just as a whole, whether it's, pass blocking, run blocking, I'm going to give, I say this now, I say this, not in the throes of a season when we're highly emotional, but in the middle of July right now, we're going to give the offensive line maybe some lenience here, I guess is what we'll call it, because, look, they're already short-staffed as it is right now, right? Like, the starters on the offensive line, you feel good about your transfers. Luke Newman, FCS All-American. Tanner Miller, okay, a midseason All-American last year. You feel good about your tackles in Lepo, Baldwin, but there's no one really at the 2 deep there that has any college experience. And it is a different scheme. They're going from an inside zone run scheme predominantly to more of the outside zone running scheme. So yes, they've had the old off season to work on it, but it's different in-game action than it is just during practice over and over again. So I know no one wants to hear it. I know it's been a struggle for the offensive line the last few years, but it could be another tough year for the offensive line. So if they struggle this season, yeah, we'll be a little annoyed, of course, in the moment, but the grander scheme of things, maybe it's a few years for the coaching of Jim Michalczyk to really get ingrained in this unit. Now for defense, enhanced pass rush. I want to see an enhanced pass rush this year. Now, sure, that can mean, just getting to the quarterback for sacks. Just simple as that. Something where there is a number that can be attached to it. Like last year, Michigan State had 29 sacks for the entire year, which was just on the lower end of average for the Big Ten. I think they were like 8th, I want to say, or something like that. But there's a lot of context to that number 29 that we saw. Because of those 29, 10 of them came in the first week against Central and Richmond combined. So their other 10 games against big boy teams, they only had 19 sacks. They really feasted against those lower opponents. So, yes, pass rush was an issue last year. That also translates to the struggles that the secondary had. I don't care if you have Sauce Gardner, Prime Darrelle Revis out there. You are going to struggle in the secondary if the quarterback has 6, 7, 8, seemingly 39 seconds to throw the ball like he did last year. So here's the interesting part, though. Joe Rossi comes in, former defensive coordinator for Minnesota. Minnesota was a team that was rarely in the upper half of the conference in sacks. But quarterback pressures, always strong in that. Now, is it just, okay, well, how good is a guy one-on-one? Like Jalen Thompson off the edge. Can he be really good enough one-on-one? Sure, that could be one path to disrupting the quarterback. But also Joe Rossi, with his schemes, with the way he camouflages who and who is not coming after the passer and who is dropping into coverage, that's where you can get slick right there. Chris Bogle had the quote of the offseason as far as defense, as far as I'm concerned. This was earlier on. This is a few months ago at this point. But he called the defense and the pass rush last year static. I think it was pretty bland. I think other offensive coordinators, other quarterbacks saw that as well, and they feasted against Michigan State. So can the pass rush get better, whether it's just, hey, good players playing good, like Jalen Thompson, maybe Chris Bogle, or is it also Joe Rossi drumming up a scheme that can work and get to the quarterback? Guys, we got a lot more to come, especially more of your mailbag questions. We're going to talk about recruiting here for a hot second. But first, you need to talk your ears off about eBay Motors, because passion, drive, and patience, you know it's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. Now, eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. We're talking superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you are looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or it's your hard-earned money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home the huge win. So what are you waiting for out there? Keep your ride or die alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, before we dive back into the mailbag here on Thursday, July 11th, so depending on when you're listening to this, it could have already happened. It could be a day before. Who knows? Nevertheless, on July 11th, Bryson Williams, he will be committing somewhere. Who knows where it's going to be? He did officially visit Michigan State. He also officially visited Kansas and Pitt. But as Ryan O'Blennis talked about over the weekend, this is a kid that has academics at the top of his mind. He has interest in Harvard, Rice, Howard, some outstanding academic institutions. Not to say Michigan State isn't a great institution, too. They're one of the best public universities out there, of course. But still, a lot of wild cards at hand here. So again, official visits to Kansas and Pitt and our Michigan State Spartans. But what kind of player would Michigan State be getting should he pledge his commitment to the green and white? 6'2", 200-pound athlete. And over on the SD4L show, Justin Thin, he put it best, saying that, hey, you know, a lot of times you see a guy that is in the recruiting services as an athlete, you know, but really he's a bona fide running back, or he's a straight-up receiver or a safety or something like that. Not with Bryson Williams. Okay, like this is a legitimate, you can plug him in a lot of places sort of athlete, right? Like you see it over at Orchard Lake St. Mary's, all right? He does running back. He plays receiver. He can return kicks. I'm pretty sure Monday through Friday, he's the assistant principal at that school too. Like this guy can do it all, and that is what Michigan State would plan him to do should he come to East Lansing. Young man, you want to play receiver? You want to give that a shot? Yeah, go for it. Hey, running back? Well, yeah, that is the frame that we look for in our running backs. Just look at Kayron Lynch-Adams, the transfer they got from UMass this year, and look at Nate Carter. Those guys are, 5'11-ish, 200-pound-ish. All right, 6'2", 200 pounds. A lot of beef on him right now. Yeah, that is the profile that they like for running backs. So this is one of the commitments, kind of like Dylan Tatum back in the day, where it's like, hey, athlete. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. That's what you begin with Bryson Williams, but on the offensive side of the ball, you'll just figure out where you're going to put him when he gets here. So this would be the third Orchard Lake St. Mary's commit should he pledge to the green and white, joining linebacker DJ White and tight end Jaden Savory. Now, the running back commit that they already have for this class, Jace Clarizio, he's a 3-star across the board, except for on 3. They have him rated as a 4-star running back, so this could be the half a running back commit to make it 1.5 running backs, I guess is what we'll call it. And wide receivers, you already have the speedy receiver out of Texas, Charles Taplin, and then Sandusky's Braylon Collier, who I think is going to be a gem in this class. So Bryson Williams committing somewhere on Thursday. Now, Lieutenant Bishop writes in, do you personally feel that MSU's ceiling, if Aidan Chiles plays at an elite level, is 10-2, like the article came out said? Now, that article he's referring to, that is Tom Fornelli of CBS Sports. He was talking, all right, well, hey, if guys hit their ceilings, how good can teams be? He said if Aidan Chiles hits his ceiling, Michigan State can be 10-2 this year. And my goodness gracious, that's optimistic. Look, we're a little optimistic about the season on this show. I'm very optimistic about the long term with Jonathan Smith and Michigan State and Aidan Chiles and everything like that. But wow, that kind of optimism puts me to shame over here because, look, guys, if Aidan Chiles plays to his ceiling and Michigan State goes 10-2, like that means that Aidan Chiles has had a Cam Newton season. Like in the sense that he's gotten Michigan State to 10 wins despite no other NFL offensive players being on his side of the ball, just like Cam Newton did at Auburn. Of course, winning the national championship, but no one else on that offense was an NFL player. That is like incredibly hard, if not borderline impossible to do, especially in this day and age of college football where teams in any given offseason can just basically make an NFL farm team with NIL funds. Like that would be crazy for just Aidan Chiles to will this team to 10-2. And I hope I'm not overstepping here. I hope I'm not, being too much of a Debbie Downer by saying that as things stand right now, I don't know if there's another NFL player on this offense. Now, could we be surprised throughout the season? Like, could Nate Carter have a really solid season? Of course. Could Jerron Glover really pop off and show his ceiling to everyone? Of course he could. Maybe some of the offensive linemen can show their worth too. Of course this could all happen, but man, for MSU to get to 10-2, you would need Aidan Chiles to play like Cam Newton. So, but this also means too that you would be beating two of OSU, Oregon, and Michigan. We all talked about that October gauntlet. We've been talking about it all offseason, right? Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa, Michigan being 4 games in a row in the month of October. Going to be dicey, right? And obviously sweeping the rest of your teams too. A lot of the coin tosses out there. And I mentioned all that because, well, some metrics like K Ford rankings, all right, they do great jobs at projections across the country. Now, no one's going to like this number. They have Michigan State projected as winning 2 Big Ten games, just Indiana and Purdue. And even those games are 55% chance to beat Indiana, 51% chance to beat Purdue. All right, there's a lot stacked against Michigan State, right? So even if Aidan Chiles is an extraordinary player this year, not just his junior year, but just right now as a sophomore, you're going to need the offensive line to surprise a lot of people. You're going to need the receiving room to surprise a lot of people. You're going to need the defense to take drastic steps just that quickly, just like the pass rush we talked about in the first segment. So let's say Aidan Chiles plays to his ceiling. I still think the ceiling as a team is 9-3. Okay, like I'm not at double-digit wins just yet. I just think that October is that hard of a stretch. Let's say that you do stun the world and you do beat Michigan, right? Okay, well, are you still beating Ohio State or Oregon and then Iowa after those 2 games? I mean, yes, you get the bye week in there, but that's asking a lot. And then a lot of the other coin flip games, like I'm not going to call that road game at Maryland, a likely win. Maryland, as weird as it is to say out loud, they're going to have a good defense this year, guys. Like that's going to be a Maryland team. No, they don't have Tagovailoa back, but they do have a lot back from their defense. And that's a Maryland team that we've struggled against the last few years, whether you'd like to admit it or not. It's tough. So there are some tough games even outside that October gauntlet that we talk about. But yeah, that's where I see the ceiling at right now. Still 9-3, but I do love the optimism of 10-2. Now, of course, this is one of the things where I'd love to be, just absolutely dead wrong about. But yeah, we'll see about that. All right, guys, we got more to come. Of course, more mailbag questions, but first, we need to talk your ears off about FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. And yes, guys, the sports that we know and love, like football, for example, NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs, like they're out of our lives right now, but there are still plenty of things to fancy a wager on, just like golf. We got the upcoming British Open or the Open, however you want to classify it, coming up. And just like I said, I love sports so much, I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sporting like we want them to. But FanDuel keeps me going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. There is something for everyone every day, all summer long. And let's say that you are just jonesing to get in on the action for college football bets, for NFL bets. Guys, they have the spreads for a lot of games out there already. They have futures. They have Heisman futures. If you want to go, throw $1 on Aidan Chiles to win the Heisman at 200-1 right now. Let's say that you do believe he'll play to his ceiling, be that Cam Newton for us this year. Go ahead. over at FanDuel. Turn $1 into $200 if you want to. So go ahead, head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. It's FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, back into the mailbag here. Again, lockedonspartans@gmail.com. Just like our good friend Greg wrote in, just it wasn't even a question. It was actually just, hey, see what they have to say about Michigan State at this link. And the link you click on is an Athletic piece by Stuart Mandel, sensational college football writer. Now, with the whole shuffle of the conferences, he did a piece of, okay, all 67 Power 4 teams, did you increase your chance to be a power? Did you decrease your chance to be a power? Or where do you sit in the new world of college football? He scored each team on a scale of a +5 to a -5. So I will let him do the explanation right now, saying, quote, the score is solely about a team's ability to win and does not take into account the team's current coaching staff or roster. Scoring a 0 means the school is neither better nor worse off. A score from 1 to 5 ranges from mildly better to far better, and -1 to -5 ranges from mildly worse to, well, as he called it. So you go down the list here, and okay, Ohio State, they're at a +4. Michigan and Penn State, they're both at a +3. So the powers are still going to get even better in this new world of college football. Where is Michigan State on here? How far down do we have to go to see where Michigan State is going to be on this? Because, oh man, does the media like raking Michigan State over the coals, don't they? Well, not Stuart Mandel, because he has Michigan State tied with Oregon as a +2. Actually, every Big Ten East team got an upgrade except Indiana. They're at a -2, but even Maryland was at a +1. Rutgers also at a +1. Nebraska staying pat with a 0. Then all other teams are in the negatives. So what did he have to say about Michigan State here? He said, well, the Spartans only made the 4-team college football playoff once. They could have made a 12-team field as many as 5 times from 2011 to 2021. They also get Ohio State off the books in 2025 and 2026 after having played the Buckeyes in 14 consecutive seasons. And I got to say, I agree. I mean, yes, it is worth pointing out that Ohio State is off the books in 2 of the upcoming years. Sure, we all know that we're going to play them this year. And then 6 days later, we're going to fly across the country to play Oregon on a Friday night. Woo, that's going to be a great time. But look, in the future, yeah, like that bodes well. And I get that the last few years have been a bad stretch. There's no question about that. But that is just a rough patch in a longer stretch of highway that Michigan State has shown the nation in the last few seasons plus, right? Just like he said, back to 2011. Since then, you could have made 5 of these 12-team playoff fields. This all starts. Michigan State's trajectory up does start with the Big Ten East eroding. You get Ohio State off the books. Like in 2025, and this might be flawed logic, but this is just the way my brain works right now. Instead of Ohio State, you get USC on your schedule. Okay, USC is a really good team, guys, right? Like they're a power. You think about the history of them. They are a borderline blue blood, if not a full-fledged blue blood, but it's still on a way different tier than Ohio State is, right? Like we're talking about a USC team that with, what they're calling the best quarterback in a generation, Caleb Williams, just went 7-5. So yeah, apologies for, saying that is a substantially better opponent to have on your schedule than Ohio State. Is that me, predicting that Michigan State will beat USC in 2025? No, but the likelihood is much higher than it is facing the Buckeyes. Or 2026, right? You get Washington and Oregon in this new schedule instead of Ohio State and Penn State. I'm taking games against Washington and Oregon over Ohio State and Penn State any day of the week. Yes, Michigan State has done well against Penn State. There's no question about that. But Washington, ever since losing Kalen DeBoer, we'll see if Jed Fish is even around 2026. That's a guy that loves to hop around jobs every 1 or 2 years. Yeah, I like that a lot more than having Ohio State on the schedule. And also, it's not just the Big Ten East eroding away, but the resources, guys. I know it's not like the most fun thing to talk about. It's just very, money and numbers based, but Michigan State is up there, not just with the Big Ten, but the rest of the college football world. This is a top 15 revenue school that we are talking. NIL is always going to have a strong footprint here. Yes, of course, other schools came in, poached away some players like a Derek Harmon, like a Simeon Barrow, but we also talked about this too in the offseason. Right now, the stage Michigan State's at, it's all about being smart with your money. Like, would I rather pay an exorbitant amount of money for a defensive lineman in a season that might go 7-5, we're still not completely there yet to compete for the college football playoff, or am I going to use that money to get 2 or 3 other future prospects, right? Like a Jeremiah Hughes, for example, out of LSU, or Samaj Bridgman out of Michigan. Like, it's about being smart with the money right now. Could there be a time where they really go for a home run in the offseason, kind of like Ole Miss has this year? They see that, okay, our schedule is a little on the weaker side. Not bad. We feel good about our team right now. Screw it. Should we just, get the NIL cannons out right now, get a bunch of great free agents, we'll call them, this offseason, and go for a 10-2 season, an 11-1 season to get in this 12-team college football playoff? I think it's going to be more common across college football. Maybe Michigan State's going to be there in 2025 or 2026 because with the Big Ten East going away, schedules are getting a lot easier. I also agree with Stuart Mandel on this too. Every single Big Ten West team has gone down on his rankings, like Illinois -2, Wisconsin -1, Minnesota -3, Northwestern, Purdue all -3, Iowa -4. Like, yeah, sure, they were having 9-win seasons all the time, but now that the Big Ten West has eroded away, the elevator's going up in difficulty for them while ours is going down a little bit. So, yes, I do fully agree with that right there. Now, Michael writes in, how would you rank Jonathan Smith amongst the other new coach hires across college football this year? I'm going to be a little boring here. I'm sorry in advance, Michael, but I'm just going to keep this just Big Ten-centric. There's just so much going on nationally. Like, yeah, I do like the Alabama hire. Don't get me wrong, for Kellen DeBoer. It's just, God, replacing Saban is an impossible task. But I do like where Michigan State stacks up in the Big Ten. Dare I say, call me just a slap here or whatnot, but I think with the situation, what the school has to offer, and the actual coach itself, I think Jonathan Smith and Michigan State is the best marriage that happened in this offseason. Like UCLA, Deshaun Foster, energetic guy. They're saying that he's got a lot of enthusiasm around this job and, the Southern California ties, but at the end of the day, he's only been a running backs coach. It's not like he's coming in with head coaching experience, rebuilding experience, which is what UCLA needs. Indiana, Curt Cignetti, no doubt a fantastic coach. He did wonderful things over at James Madison, but two things. He's 63 years old. Yes, he does seem to have a little bit of Tom Izzo in him where he just has so much energy that he might as well be coached till he's 83. But it's not like Indiana's pouring a lot of resources into football. That might be a little hard to work out, even for as good of a coach as Curt Cignetti. Washington with Jedd Fisch. I love Jedd Fisch, the coach. He did awesome at Arizona, obviously. But just like I said not too long ago, and this isn't like me doing a bit or a joke, go ahead and look at his Wikipedia. He is rarely at places for more than 2 years. I think he tops out at 3 years, and then he's ever been at. So, sure, could he do well for Washington in year 1, year 2? Yeah. But is he back to the NFL in year 3? Like, probably if history is any indicator of how much he likes to jump around, yeah. So, look, if you're going to, try to project where things are going to go long-term with coaches, I can't do it with Jedd Fisch just because he jumps around too easily. And then Michigan's a weird one. Like, that's a wild card with Sherrone Moore. How much patience will the fans have? Like, are they happy going 9-3, let's say, for the next few seasons after a national title, perhaps? Or are they going to go, we'll call it 9-3 or 8-4 with a very hard schedule, replacing a lot of players, replacing an entire coaching staff this year, and just want him out after 1 year, making his seat white hot in 2025? Maybe. Or, of course, will there be any sanctions from the NCAA? I know that there are people on Michigan's side that think that all that they're going to do is just get one intern show-caused, basically. And, well, a lot of the college football world thinks that, well, yeah, for a grand cheating scheme, and let's not get it twisted, like that is what it was. You could go ahead and read the Athletic piece where they talked to personnel, coaches. It was a pretty high percentage of coaches that said, yes, what they did drastically gives them an enhancement throughout Plains. We all know this. Will anything happen? Now, for me, I'll go on the record and say, no, I don't think anything's going to happen to them. I think it is going to be a very light punishment. If we know anything about the NCAA, it's that Central Michigan is going to get a much harsher punishment for what they did on Michigan State sidelines than what Big Bad Michigan will get for what they did the entire season. Like, I just want to get ahead of that right now. So, but hey, let's say something weird does happen and they do get like a hammer, so to speak. Like, that's going to make the job a little hard for Sherrone Moore too, don't you think? Whereas Michigan State, we just talked about, they have the resources, of course, the new football building. NIL has a strong foothold. Jonathan Smith also has the experience of rebuilding. All right, Michigan State still in a better spot than what Oregon State was when he took over a few years ago, a one-win team. I think it's a rebuild, but already a few steps ahead of where Oregon State was, and you have a guy that knows how to get it done. So that's why I have Jonathan Smith so high on the list right there. All right, guys. Hey, Thanks a lot for tuning in. Locked on Spartans, your team in green and white every day. If you wrote in any basketball questions, we're going to get to that next week with our guy Carter Elliott. I pulled aside all the basketball questions, and we're going to run through it with another basketball mind here. So if you're wondering where the basketball talk is, it's coming next week. But hey, guys, until then, okay, enjoy the rest of your week. Love you all. Go green.